Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. I appreciate everyone joining the webinar. So my name is Mark Amato. I'm a solutions architect with CloudGenix, and I'll be running through the webinar, and Richard Gallagher is on to help out with some questions if we need it. So jumping right into it, why are we here today? Well, we're here to discuss how to deploy CloudGenix at scale for enterprise networks. I'm sure most of us on the call have had some experience deploying one or multiple sites for enterprises, and we're probably pretty familiar with some of the challenges with that. Now, CloudGenix has solved a lot of the simplicity, even just in the UI, but today we're here to talk about how do we do this at scale, whether it's 10, 50, 100, 1,000 sites, to be able to do this more efficiently and more effectively. So how is it done? With DevOps, which is essentially automation with the CloudGenix API. And today we're going to be leveraging Python to take advantage of this. And then for the problems that are solved, again, this is something we're all probably pretty familiar with, but we're going to help reduce those cutover windows. We're going to ensure that project completion time is on time or shortened. We're going to make sure that there's configuration accuracy. So we're not going to have the same type of human error that we've had in previous configurations. And we're also going to help reduce the failure time from recovery. So for our agenda today, we're going to do a quick CloudGenix SD-WAN overview. We're going to talk about automation, how and why. We're going to look at the assumptions with Python, the CloudGenix SDK, and the CloudGenix Config utility that we'll use. We're going to look at the CloudGenix site configuration and YAML files. We'll do a quick portal overview or a controller overview. We will generate an authentication token from the portal so that you can authenticate when running this automation. And then the last piece, which I think is the most interesting is the interactive demo, which will show how we actually automate deployments. We'll use the CloudGenix Config utility. The first piece of that is we'll use the pull site to actually export the configuration, and we'll use the do site to push that back. We'll also walk through Jinja templates and a CSV file that we're going to use as our data repository to actually deploy 3 sites. So as we jump into it, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this, but CloudGenix SD-WAN solution allows us to use multiple transport. We're transport agnostic. It allows us to have end-to-end visibility for application flows, regardless where those applications live. And the remote users are going to be, or the operators are going to be interfacing with the CloudGenix controller. So today, most users do all of the configuration through the CloudGenix controller. Today, we're going to walk through using the API to interface with the controller to push those configurations out to the branches. So where is the source of truth? So today, for most customers, the source of truth is the controller, right? That's the control. That will be the source of truth for all of the end devices. What we're talking about today is having a data repository, which could be Git, it could be a CSV, it could be an IPAM, which allows you to go out and push a configuration to that repository and then have it replicated out to the controller. The controller can then push the configuration to all of the devices. So this is full site and device configuration. We're able to claim the devices. We're able to push the configuration to them. We're able to do software upgrades. All of the stuff that you would typically have to do in multiple steps in the UI, we're going to be able to do this in one step. What we even see with customers is we see customers doing this ahead of time, where we can have all of our device configuration, push it to this repository, and then go and spin up sites so that way, when it's time to cut over, all we have to do is just move cables. So we've seen this with customers that are just turning up a handful of sites, to our manufacturing customers that are doing hundreds of sites a month, some retail customers that are doing hundreds of sites a week. So you really have the ability to run as fast as you want with this. Some of the other things that we're able to do from an update perspective if we think about the work that would go into updating some small settings at a site, it was typically laborious. If we wanted to update a DNS server, or if we wanted to change our naming conventions at all of our sites, that typically required a lot of work, and then there was room for human error. With this, we're able to push this configuration out to, in this case, a corporate DNS server, out to the DevOps server, and push that configuration to the cloud controller and update all of those devices, shortening the time that it takes, and again, reducing that chance of human error. Additionally, we have the ability to recover from failure, where again, if a device fails, we're able to put a new device out there, push the configuration to the DevOps server, and allow the controller to push it out to that site. And the other thing that we can do, if you think about recovering from a failure or recovering from a change, maybe a user made a change to one site that was out of spec from a compliance standpoint or an audit standpoint, we're able to push that configuration back out from the DevOps server to the controller and again out to the device. So the first thing, we're going to be working with Python today. This is a link to where you can get Python and deploy it or download it for your platform. We are recommending Python 3 for all of this work. Here's a list of the CloudGenix public SDKs. Again, there's multiple languages out here, but we're going to be focusing on Python for the purposes of this demonstration. And here is the CloudGenix. This is where it's stored out on GitHub. This is the CloudGenix utility. You're able to go to GitHub, download this, read some more information about it, or install it simply by using pip. And then the CloudGenix Config utility. This is what's going to allow us to have a simple export, import, and then do our templating. Again, you can go out and get this on GitHub or install it through pip. This is going to allow us quick and easy DevOps style automation for exporting site configurations, creating a repository to store configuration, which helps us set up a continuous integration worker to apply these changes, and then modify and check in those configurations. We're also going to be working with YAML files today. So the YAML file is a human-friendly data serialization standard for all programming languages. The CloudGenix configuration file will be stored in this YAML format, and each site will have its unique YAML config. So this is probably something that might even be a surprise to some customers as we spend our days in the CloudGenix UI, not in a CLI. This is where we actually are able to go interface with the controller from an API perspective and pull down the information that's stored in the controller. So for the demo today, we're going to be working with Jinja, which is how we're going to create a template. We're going to be working with the data repository for purposes of this demonstration. It's going to be CSV. We have another script that we're going to show you, which is a config maker, which actually generates the configuration for the individual sites. So in this case, we're going to be deploying 3 sites. We'll use that CSV and the template to produce these 3 sites. We'll then use the CloudGenix config utility and do site to push those configurations out to the devices. We'll go through a little bit of an overview of the portal, just from what information is being stored in there, and compare that to what the YAML file looks like. But as everyone's aware, the regular and daily interaction is done through the portal. That's where we spend our time. This is a DevOps interaction using the API calls, which is something that we use less frequently or not as much on a daily basis, but is really helpful again for deploying at scale. And then I'm going to walk you through getting the Auth token, which is just a quick couple steps through system administration and Auth tokens, and we'll generate a Auth token based on role. We'll create that, and then I'll show you how to place that into the settings file that is actually downloaded when you download the CloudGenix tools from GitHub. And let me stop sharing my screen for 1 second, and we'll jump into the demo.
Thanks, Mark. While you're getting that set up, for anybody who's joined in the last 10 minutes, if you do have questions, please leverage the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Thanks.
All right, so the first thing I want to do is I want to walk you through getting an authentication token. So this is the CloudGenix UI. Right now I'm looking at my sites. I have one demo site already created. And this is pretty typical for a deployment. What we'll do is we'll go build our first site or a site type. And then our goal was that we want to replicate this site, that I'm going to go spin up one-to-many sites that look very similar to this site. So I want to templatize this and then be able to deploy it with different variables. So the first step is I want to set up an auth token so that we can authenticate to the portal from a DevOps perspective. Now, there's multiple ways to do this. You can have an interactive demo, but auth token is probably more preferred. So I'll create this auth token, and I'm going to create it as a super user. And we can set an expiration date. We don't want these to live forever, and so I'm going to let this live for about 3 hours, and I'll create this authentication token. I'll copy this and close it. Now you'll see out here that the session key, this is not the full session key. This is out here just so that you can compare it to your settings file to see which one that you're going to be using. If you have one that may not have an expiration or one that's a view only, then what I can do is I can open my settings file, which is stored out here. So I will open this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste this in here. Save this. You'll see that there's multiple ways to authenticate. Again, it can be interactive, but it's much easier with the authentication token. So close that. And then now that I have this authentication token, what I'm able to do is I'm able to go out and actually pull down this site, this demo site. So what I'll do is I will use the pull site command, and I'm actually right here. I'm referencing. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. I'm referencing the site of demo site, and then I'm outputting it to a file. So right now the script is going out, and it's interfacing with the controller, and it's pulling down that site. And there we go, it's completed. And then what I can do is I'll open that, and we can take a look at what's actually in this file. So here's the file, and what we can do is we can compare this to my demo site that I just pulled. So if we look at this, this is the site configuration. So here's the name of the site, demo site. It aligns to what we're seeing here in the portal. So we're just a little bit. There we go. So the location you'll see here is the same. If we look at the devices, there's the device name. Here's the under the element configuration, here's the device name. And then we can jump down into the specifics. So we can jump into the demo Ion 2K, and we can look at the interfaces. So we'll look at interface 1. As we jump in, here's interface 1 reference here. We will see that it's set up for DHCP. We'll see our WAN label, which is referenced here. Some of the other things that we might want to look to verify. We jump to routing. We can look at BGP. So we'll jump here. Here is the CloudGenix AS is referenced here. It's also referenced here in the YAML file. from the peer perspective, my AT&T MPLS peer, as well as the peer IP and the remote AS. We then have a static config referenced right here. It is a global config as referenced right here. Some of the other things that are important that we might want to look at is the serial number, referenced right here, as well as the software version that's running on there. Now, if we were pulling down a site that had HA and had multiple ions in it, that would be referenced in here as well. So you could do one pull site and it would get all of the devices at that site. Now, again, our goal is to deploy a site that looks very similar to this. So we want to start to templatize this. So how do we do that? We're going to build in variables in places of things that we want to change. So for example, demo site is probably not going to be called demo site anymore. It's going to be called demo site 2, 3, 4, whatever that is. So we'll create these variables. We'll variabilize the city. And what we'll do is we'll continue to do this and walk through the configuration and variabilize all of the things that are going to change. So again, obviously the address, the device name, we're probably going to change the WAN label on this Internet 1 port. We may leave it as DHCP. Our port 2, we're going to want to change the actual the IP and the next hop for our connection to our MPLS provider, as well as the MPLS WAN label. Again, some of the other things that we can do, we could configure the controller. We may deploy this with a DHCP controller, and then later we might want to come back and push this to a static configuration. We can do that as well. Any of the NTP, any of the routing, BGP, static routes. Again, we would definitely want to templatize the serial number because we were going to want to be deploying different devices to the site. And then the software version. We might have this hard-coded in our configuration because this is the image that we've standardized on, but we also might want to variabilize this so that as we upgrade or change versions of code in the future, we can plug that into the data repository and change that. When you push this configuration to the site, if the software configuration referenced in the configuration file is different than what's on the device, it will go out and either upgrade or downgrade that device to get it to the version of code that matches this. And then some of the last piece of this is the WAN labels that are assigned to the interfaces with, again, the link up and down, the network ID, and the network type. So rather than running through all of that and how we templatize that, I have a config file that's already done. So what we can do is now take a look at this. So now I've gone through and I've done all of the templating for the site, the host name, all of the things that I was just talking about, the internet labels, the IP addresses, WAN labels, the LAN address, and then obviously down here more of the serial numbers, BGP configuration, my AS, the peer AS, and then all of my WAN label information, including the bandwidth up and down. The next piece of this is how do I get the data into these variables? Well, the first piece is having a data repository. Now, for purposes of this demonstration, we're using CSV. Again, this could be Git, it could be your IPAM. There's multiple things that you could use as your data repository, but for this demo, we're going to be using a CSV. You'll see here, if I browse up, again, these variable names match exactly what is stored in the Jinja template. So what happens is, as I run a script, I will actually take these variables and I will create a site for every line. So I will have demo site 2, demo site 3. Again, they're all going to have similar addresses, but their internet labels are going to vary. The gateways are gonna change. The WAN network addresses, the WAN labels, the LAN addresses. All of this information that is in your deployments is different at all of the sites. we're gonna input this information into the ZSV and then run a script that actually builds the new configuration. So what we'll do is I will jump back to my terminal, and I'll go ahead and I'll actually run the script that actually builds this configuration. And all the script does is we could open this, but all it does is it says, where is my data repository stored and where is my Jinja template stored. So if I go and run this configuration or this script, it just created 3 configuration files. And we can take a look at them, and we'll see here that here is demo site 3, right? So it looks very similar to demo site with the same address, but all of the information that we variabilized has now been updated. We have different WAN labels, we have different IPs, everything that we just walked through, including down to some of the really important stuff like serial number, has all been changed so that we're deploying it to the right devices. The next and final piece of this is to actually go out and deploy a site. So I'll go back here, and then I'll also go back to sites. And we see here, as of right now, we only have 1 demo site. What I'll do is I'll run the do site command with the config file that was just generated with the combination of the CSV and the Jinja template. So right now we started to create the WAN labels, and now we're assigning the element to that site that we just created. Again, we would verify software right there, so if it needed to be upgraded or downgraded, that would happen. So now we've gone and we've deployed that entire site. We've configured all of the interfaces, static routes, BGP, all of that information. And if we do a quick refresh here, we'll see that that demo site 2 has been created. So as fast as you can build a site in the UI, it might only take you a few minutes to do it. Clicking through the UI, you can see how fast this was. We were able to do this pretty rapidly. And then I want to deploy a 3rd site, and I can do that as well. So we're going to do the same thing. It's pushing that configuration out to the controller, and you know, in under a minute or so, we'll have that 3rd site out there, including the binding process to the site. That's done. And again, you can see how fast it is. This would typically take us, you know, a few minutes, and those sites have now all been deployed. So you can see that as we go to expand this to whether it's, you know, 5 sites an hour, 5 sites a day, whatever it is for your company that you want to deploy, the CloudGenix config utility is going to allow you to deploy these at scale. And again, without the chances of that human interaction or human error when we're clicking through information and doing the wrong, maybe we configure the wrong port or the wrong IPs, and we fat finger an IP. So all of that is done. We can walk through some of this configuration, and we'll see that it's all been deployed. So here's my AT&T MPLS. Here's my static route. And all of the interface configs. So I know that was a lot of information to run through, and I probably ran through it a little fast, but let's see if we have any questions and answers. So Max has a question. Currently, our team has no Python skill sets. So that's the beauty of this, in that I'm not a developer. I'm a network engineer by trade. I didn't have to write the config utility or the script that built the configuration. All I had to be able to do was go in and templatize my site that I wanted to replicate, and then build a CSV with those same variables. So there's not any Python experience needed there. So it's pretty common across some of my customers where there's not a very strong Python skill set, and that's not needed. We have customers that are deploying sites at scale just by following these few simple steps. What is TextMate referring to? TextMate is the application that I use to work with text. So on the Mac, when you want to open up, it's Open Application TextMate, and I want to view this file. So I could use Vim, I could use Less, but that's just the tool I use to work with YAML files and edit. So some people might use PyCharm or Notepad++, whatever it may be. What other options could you use other than a CSV for your variables? So we are able to use Git. I think Aaron has done a really good video out there for Network as Code that shows Git being used as a repository. We have other customers that are using their IPAM. One of our customers is using the IPAM to interface with this, and they're doing about 300 sites a week. Yeah, you could use, Suraj, you could use whatever tool you want to work with the YAML file. So whatever you want to work with to edit them and variabilize them, that's completely fine. We will be sharing these videos. I'm not sure if it's later today. At some point, Leah can probably, as she jumps back on, she can probably work with that.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Those the videos will be made available when the series is completed.
So doSite is the command that we will actually take that YAML file and we will push it out to the controller so that the CloudGenix controller can replicate it to, or can then create the site from it and then push the configuration to the devices. You can remove and replace the configuration. So there is an option in the doSite to actually go out and remove that site entirely, as well as the fact that you can do the doSite with a new YAML file or a modified YAML file to make changes. So if I wanted to make changes to my interface, I forgot to put descriptions, I could just add a new variable to my Jinja template. I could rerun the script, create the new files, and push it out with descriptions on all of my interfaces. Or I could simply just go into a specific file. Let's say, for example, I have a different site out here and I want to just add a description. I could pull down the demo site 3 file, edit interface 1 description, and push it back, and it will just make that change. Is there a command that you can run that shows what changes would be made if you ran the do script like an audit? Leo or Richard, I don't know if you can answer. I know that one of the things you can do is you can go out into the audit log for that site and you can see what changes were made. So you can look at that site or that interface and do an audit on it and say, this is what was there and this is what it was changed to do a compare and contrast. I'm not sure if that answers the question exactly.
That's correct, Mark. Even on your screen, it shows updated interface 1, for example, and then it says no change for others and created, and an audit can be run against that.
So there is a bunch of other things that can be automated for these deployments. So it's not just multiple sites. There's a lot of things through the CloudGenix API, and I think they might get into that tomorrow in some of the automation, but there is a lot of flexibility when you talk about your entire customer environment as a whole and things that you may want to go pull or change. So you do have a lot of flexibility there. So somebody was asking to see the template file again. Give me 1 second, I'll pull that back up. So they have to scroll back up. This was this was the Ginger template file. That's what somebody wanted to see. Max. So this will show all of the variables. And again, we could templatize what we want, and then you can have this for, this might be your site type 1. This is all of your single ION 2K sites that have internet and MPLS. There's a lot of questions. So, what is the difference in using INI or using CSV files? I don't think there's necessarily really a difference. It's just where are you storing the data repository, and then the automation script that we ran actually just takes the variables from that CSV and essentially puts them in, or almost like a find and replace, into this file and creates a new file from it. So rather than just a find and replace in this file, it creates a new site and saves it as that. I think we're getting through most of the questions. Leo, did you see any that I missed?
Yeah, we have one for regarding if you want to remove and replace the configuration. There's a question about that.
So that's possible. Again, we can edit a single file, the single site configuration. So again, remember I pushed a configuration for demo site 3. So I could go in here and modify this configuration and put it back up there. So say when I was manually typing into my CSV and I typed the wrong LAN address, I could actually go out and just change this and re-push it back to the site. Or there is an option on the do site to remove the entire site and unbind the ION from that site and not have that there at all.
Okay. And Richard is going to answer a question about automating parameters from the advanced items page.
Yeah, so there was a question, can we automate the parameters in the advanced menu that we have, which covers, some NAT and device management policy. So all of that is stored in the configuration. So you can see, that Mark has some highlighted here. This is the external access. So this is the device management config. If you had any NetFlow or NAT configuration, that would also be in there as well.
Okay, and Manas has a question about, is it only for multiple site automation, or can anything else be automated? And the
Richard, are you taking that one? Or
the other things can be automated, but today's demonstration is just for automating deployment for multiple sites. So other things like claiming and unclaiming can be automated with different types of scripts, but that isn't within the scope of today's webinar. And we have
the decommissioning one. We can have, yes, we can absolutely decommission the site as well.
Okay. And there's another question from Max. He's asking, we currently have quite a few spares connected to the LAN switches throughout the entire enterprise. Is this the best way to deploy the configs on those devices using the CSV and Jinja templates?
Okay, so I think what the answer or the question is for Max is essentially you have hot spares that are plugged in at the site, and yes, we could absolutely push the configuration file to those sites while they're plugged in as well, rather than going through the UI and clicking through.
Okay. Any other questions? Looks like we got them all.
So again, this is when you think about what it takes to do a deployment, this greatly reduces the amount of time it takes to set it up. Creating the template doesn't take very long at all, you know, but it is a little bit of work up front, and that allows you to then, you know, push this out at scale. So I'm sure any one of the customers on the phone that would like some help with this, the SE team will be happy to help you walk you through that, as well as Leo's team as well. We'd be happy to get engaged and see how we can get you spinning up sites at a good clip.
Oh,
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Go ahead, Leo.
Oh, another question for you, Mark. Pavel has a question. How does the CGX device get assigned to the site based on device serial number?
That is correct. So at the bottom of this configuration, we have a serial number referenced here. So when it's pushing out the configuration, it sees this serial number that's associated to this site, and it starts the assigning process. And if I go back to my terminal in the do site, one of the first things it does is it goes through and it creates the WAN interface labels, and then it checks the element that it saw from a serial number. It verifies that the code is correct. If the code wasn't correct, it would update the code or downgrade the code to the appropriate code, and then it assigns the element to the site. We wait until the element is fully assigned to the site, and then we will update all of the parameters that are included in the configuration file.
Okay, and another question from Siraj. Is there an easy way to undo the script which was run, just in case something were to go wrong? Or does he have to rerun the backup script to get it back into the old state?
Yep, there is an ability to destroy the site. So Siraj, I can walk you through that, how we can push the site and then just destroy it and delete it. And that's actually the process that we've walked through for this demo purpose. Richard, Leo, and a bunch of people in Leo's team have ran through this, and we've created these and decommissioned these sites multiple times. Is it possible to automate parameters? Yes. So the device management policy is able to be updated as well, Joe, as well as all of the security bindings. If we were using a firewall, if there were any tags on the site for connecting to, say Prisma Access or something like that, or Azure Virtual WAN, or whatever third-party integration that you're using with the Cloud Blade, that piece could be integrated as well, or pushed through the configuration as well. All right, I think it looks like we're good on questions as of right now. Unless we have some other ones, I'll turn it back over to you, Liz.
Awesome.
I think that was it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark, and thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate it. If you do have questions, go ahead and get them submitted here in the next couple of minutes. If we did miss anything, we will have a list of these questions and we'll follow up with you afterwards. So the next two sessions we have for this week, we'll see you guys back on the line at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow for programming with the CloudGenix Python SDK. We do recommend as a prerequisite for that training that you do have some exposure to Python. We do recommend Python 101 course, some of which you can find free online. On Thursday, we'll see you online at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern for enabling chat ops. So that said, if you have any questions, and to Mark's point, hopefully all of you have an email from myself. If not, please work with your CloudGenix SE for any additional follow-up or questions you may have. Otherwise, thanks for the time. These are being recorded, and recordings will be made publicly available at the end of our series next week. If you need them in advance, please reach out to the team. Thanks so much, everyone.